In 1986, Kenner, who once ruled the toy aisles with their Star Wars line, were out of toys to make for characters and vehicles in a galaxy far, far away, thanks to the final fumes of the saga having run completely dry. Witnessing the success of Hasbro's G.I. Joe and Transformers line, they decided to merge the two, again. They had already done so a year prior with Mask, a combination of transforming vehicles with human drivers, and the idea was fairly successful. In '86, they'd try to merge organics with technology again.
Becoming man and machine, power extreme.
This time, it wasn't as financially successful, but sentiment doesn't always coincide with profit.
I guess not.
This is the powerful and extremely finite history of Kenner's
The Centurion.
Unlike many toy lines in the 80s, Centurions only lived one short year. If you're interested in official Centurions toys, you won't find anything outside of 1986. They had a giant marketing campaign behind it in hopes that it would take off like the massive cross-promotion campaigns for Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Masters of the Universe had, but none of it seemed to grab hold enough to warrant a second year of releases. As with most toy lines in the 80s, an animated series accompanied it to give life to the characters and their arsenals. Actually, accompanied isn't the right word. Preceded it. Centurions began as a show that had a toy line tie-in, not the other way around as was usually the case. A total of 65 episodes, the magic number back then for syndication, were produced by Ruby Spears, known for such hits as the Plastic Man comedy adventure show and Alvin and the Chipmunks. It was one of their most ambitious endeavors to that date, as most of their other shows were short runs, like Thundar the Barbarian, Dragon's Lair, and Sectars. While they usually tried to put out great programming that tried to be somewhat more educational than most toy commercial cartoon producers.
About 300 million years ago, only one giant landmass, called Pangaea, rose out of the ocean.
Ruby Spears was one of the least successful production studios when it came to shows with toy line tie-ins. Along with the previous year's 5-episode-long Sectars show, they gave the toy commercial show concept a real effort in '86, with Laser Tag Academy, Rambo Force of Freedom, and Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. You can have a few bombs as long as you have a few hits to balance them out, as Sunbow showed, but Ruby Spears just didn't have any luck when it came to toy tie-in shows. The show was animated in Japan by Nippon Sunrise's Studio 7. Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, and Norio Shioyama contributed to the designs. The series first aired with a 5-parter beginning on Monday, April 7th, 1986, with The Sky is on Fire. Despite being a 5-parter, there's no origin story. The Centurions are already established, as well as their weapon systems and their enemies. All the setup you need is given in the show's intro, which explains that it's set in the near future. 3 defenders of freedom, deemed Centurions, wear exosuits which have beaming technology, just like on Star Trek. The exosuits are tough too. They can withstand strong winds that would tear off normal clothes. They can beam to anywhere on the planet, or off, as long as they have their communicators, and can combine with various weapon systems which are stored in a space station orbiting Earth called Skyvault, overseen by their teammate Crystal Kane, or as Ace calls her, gorgeous, beautiful, or darling.
Ready when you are, beautiful.
She had a knack for knowing just what weapon system was most appropriate for each situation.
We need.
I know what you need. Trust me.
She was kept company by her orangutan, Lucy.
Isn't it incredible, Lucy?
The beaming technology isn't just handy for transporting the Centurions to trouble. Just like on Star Trek, it could be used to pull them out of a jam as well.
Beam Ace up, Crystal. Emergency.
We do get a glimpse of the days before the team is established, though, in one of the final episodes, Man or Machine Part 2. It isn't anything spectacular. The trio is simply hired based on their credentials. A bit disappointing as far as superhero origin stories go.
To protect Earth from attacks by Doc Terror.
We do get to see Max Ray trying out a slightly different looking prototype of the exosuit, though. It looks like Crystal is wearing a prototype of Ace McLeod's suit. Ironic, considering Ace spends the entire show trying to get into her pants. The show features some Sunbow alumni, Neil Ross as Ace McLeod, Pat Fraley as Max Ray, Ed Gilbert as Hacker, and Michael Bell as John Thunder. Transformers fans will be happy to see DevCon's little buddy Slizardo make a cameo too.
What have we here?
Looks like he's been hitting the gym. And growth hormone. Like with Transformers, the animation on the show ranges from superb to standard. For the superb episodes, the animation is very impressive. Beautiful camera angles, intense action, and ammo continuity. If a missile is fired, it's gone, and remains gone until the weapon system is recalled and reloaded. Since the show was sold into syndication right from the start, there isn't much continuity between the episodes. There are a few two-parters to give a more substantial story than 22 minutes allows, but the show can be watched out of sequence without any confusion. In addition to the 65 episodes, the story continued in DC Comics. Strangely though, it came out the following year, after the plug had already been pulled. The 4-issue limited series consisted of new stories instead of rehashing existing episodes. Issue 2 gives us another glimpse at the origin of the Centurions through flashbacks, how the program came to be, some backstory on Ace, Jake, and Max, and some future history to set the stage a little more than the show did. The final official North American Centurion story is Double Cross, published in September of '87. Although it seems to take place before the new Centurions, Rex Charger and John Thunder, join the team. Once again, Crystal has the last laugh by getting into Ace's pants and top, as well as his weapon system, Orbital Interceptor. There's no official end, the team doesn't disband. You can just imagine them going right back to fighting the forces of Doc Terror the next day. In the UK, London Editions released a total of 10 comics, the first 4 using the same stories as the DC comics, and then original stories for the remaining 6.
Centurion! Power Xtreme!
Man Machine! Figures as shown, other toys sold separately, new from Kent.
The toy line only released 5 figures, but at 7 inches tall each. They packed a lot more punch than most other figures of the time. There were 3 heroes and 2 villains released initially, which all came with basic weapon systems, plus a pair of Doom drones. Although the figures feature arms and legs on ball joints, they have limited range and have become very brittle over the decades. Just because you can put their arms up over their heads doesn't mean you should. The exosuits have holes on the arms, legs, and torso, which the various pieces of weapon systems can be plugged into. And a gear is also in the torso of each figure that allows turning of a weapon on one side to connect to a weapon on the other side of the body, making it turn or launch a spring-loaded missile.
Let's cut the jabbering and get beaming.
Starting with the heroes, the leader of the Centurions.
Max Ray, Brilliant Sea Operations Commander.
The team was only made up of 3 men initially, so Max didn't throw his weight around much when it came to pulling rank. It was more of a respect thing than a chain of command. As the underwater expert, Max was given a green and black exosuit to blend in with his aquamarine surroundings. His head sculpt seems to strongly resemble Tom Selleck from Magnum P.I. Included with the Max figure was the cruiser weapon system,
Power Xtreme!
which consisted of the helmet, which would be needed for most of the other weapon systems, a backpack, a missile launcher with hydro missile, a pair of hydro thrusters, a keel fin repulsor, and a repulsor cannon. Giving each part a unique name rather than just calling it a generic missile or weapon harkens to Hasbro's blueprints for G.I. Joe vehicles, or how Tolkien gave several swords in Lord of the Rings their own name, even the ones that weren't magical. A lot of extra care and creativity was put into the weapon systems to help imagine what they would be like if they existed in real life. There's 2 ways to fire the hydro missile.
Fire Hydro Missile!
Either by pulling the switch, or by rotating the keel fin. Being able to fire missiles by turning a weapon or part on the other side of the figure makes Centurions especially dangerous, as they're more susceptible to accidentally firing than most spring-loaded missile launchers. In addition to the smaller cruiser weapon system, 3 separate weapon systems were released for Max in '86, 2 mid-sized and 1 large-sized.
Max calling Skybolt! Send Tidal Blast!
The first mid-size system is Tidal Blast.
Assembling.
It consisted of the backpack turbo unit, the chest pack hydrofoil unit, a pair of keel fins, a pair of shark missiles, a sonic thruster, a harpoon, repulsor cannon, a target sensor, a cable winch, and a grappling hook.
The Centurions will continue after these messages. We now return to the Centurion.
While there was a standard configuration for each weapon system on the show, the beauty of Centurions is that it encouraged creativity in how the parts could be assembled onto the figure. The box for each weapon system shows a few different configurations, some different from on the show, and there are countless other configurations possible too. There's no right or wrong way to put them together, only standard or unique. Tidal Blast had two gimmicks. Rotating the repulsor cannon on the chest pack makes the breathing apparatus pump up and down, and rotating it left or right will launch a shark missile on either side of the backpack.
Talk about shooting fish in a barrel.
Since Tidal Blast was airtight, had its own oxygen supply, and designed to withstand pressure from great depths, it was capable of being used not just underwater, but for a short time in space as well when Ace needed backup.
I can only survive in space for a few minutes.
Max firmly disagreed with Randy Savage's opinion on space, though.
Space is the place me and Gene Okerlund go down that lonesome highway, yeah!
And preferred to keep his visits there few and far between.
Space is just not my place.
The thrusters on Tidal Blast not only propelled Max at high speeds underwater, they were also strong enough to give Max super strength and lift humongous objects up out of the water. This really shows how strong the exosuit integrated with the weapon system was too.
Skybolt, beam me and Seabat to Ace's coordinates, fast!
Beaming.
Max's other mid-sized weapon system was released very late in the run and in very small quantities, originally intended for the second year of the line that never came to be.
Power Xtreme!
Seabat is one of the more sought-after Centurions releases and goes for an astounding amount compared to the other weapon systems.
You'll get a kick out of this.
Yeah, a real kick in the bank account. It includes the Batwing Thruster Unit, a chest hydrofoil unit, a deep sea scope, 6 flexi hose connections, a heat-seeking harpoon, a depth charger, and 6 Barracuda missiles.
Launch Barracuda missile.
By turning a knob on the Batwing thruster, the screw propellers would turn and a breathing apparatus would pump on the chest unit.
Beam down depth charger assault weapon system.
Assembling.
When Max required the heaviest artillery, the large-size weapon system depth charger was beamed down. Although the cruiser helmet can be worn under the canopy, Max always goes helmetless on the show when equipped with depth charger, so it's supposed to be airtight. It consisted of an Aqua Thruster backpack,
Auxiliary Aqua Thruster, now!
a torpedo unit chest pack, a pair of pontoon thrusters,
Activate pontoon thrusters, now! Depth charger, dive!
a canopy, directional aqua fins, aqua thruster fins, a pair of sea torpedoes,
Fire deep sea torpedo!
a pair of aqua cannons,
Activate aqua cannon, now!
and the colossal hydromine, capable of incurring massive damage,
Detonate hydromine, now!
or creating Max's own tidal wave to ride.
Release hydromine! Detonate!
Because it's not as maneuverable as Max's other weapon systems, Jake Rockwell, the land expert, was able to use it without needing Max's underwater expertise to operate it, as seen in the episode Atlantis Adventure 2.
This thing's a bit trickier than I thought.
Next is the Flyboy.
Ace McLeod, daring air operations expert.
Confident and cocky, but not obnoxious, thanks to being an eternal optimist. There's no jam Ace can't make light of or soar out of.
Let's fly!
He's got a bit of Sam Malone-itis.
Sweetheart, fate must have sent you.
He's like a dog in heat whenever any lady appears.
It's like I said before, guys. All the girls love Ace.
Down boy. His exosuit is silver with blue to blend in with the sky. The head sculpt could be based on Robert Redford, who played a pilot in the 1975 film The Great Waldo Pepper. The small-sized weapon system included with Ace is Sky Knight. Consisting of the helmet, backpack, laser cannon chest pod, a pair of thrusters, laser cannons, stencil missiles, a laser-guided bomb, and a dual laser. When a weapon on one side of the torso is turned, the weapon on the opposite side will spin, and the wings on the backpack will go in and out. Despite being out of his element, Max Ray used Sky Knight in To Dare Dominion Part 1, since aerial backup was required. Ace was injured and Jake was using Hornet.
I'm no flying fishman. I'm getting the hang of it.
McLeod was the ace of the air, and of space as well.
Ace the Skybolt. I need orbital interceptor.
His lone mid-sized weapon system was Orbital Interceptor, capable of interstellar travel. Since the suit was pressurized and airtight for survival in outer space, it could be used underwater as well to give Max some backup, although Ace wasn't a fan of underwater encounters.
You okay? I'd rather be up top. Water's for baths, not battles.
Orbital Interceptor consisted of a life support helmet, the only weapon system other than the basic small ones included with the figures to include its own helmet, a backpack, a chest thruster unit, a particle beam missile, atmospheric thrusters and nozzles, a pair of particle beam defensors, a radar homing device and radar dish, and a target sensor and swivel. Rotating either the sensor or radar homing device will cause the other to spin, and turning either will launch the particle beam missile. Unlike on the show, the visor on the toy helmet is solid, but I've customized one with a yellow tinted visor using clear plastic from toy packaging and a yellow Sharpie.
How about some heavy artillery?
Skybolt is on the way.
For heavy artillery, Ace's large-sized weapon system was Skybolt. Not to be confused with Skyvault, the Centurion space station. Skybolt consisted of the enormous backpack, a chest unit, a pair of booster stabilizer pods, modular invertible wings, radar tracking wings, missile launchers with spring-loaded heat-seeking splicer missiles, galactic missiles, an anti-radar deflector, and an infrared sensor. Skybolt had a number of different features. Pressing the backpack button could make the turbine spin and turn the chest shaft. Turning the anti-radar deflector will make the infrared sensor pulsate up and down. The pair of splicer missiles will fire when the firing switch is pulled, or by mounting a splicer missile on the rotating plug on the backpack unit. And lastly, the modular invertible wings can be mounted in either swept wing formation, like a Sky Striker, or forward swept wing configurations, like a Conquest. When equipped with this gargantuan weapon system, it was all fun and games for Ace in the air.
How about a game of hide and seek? Tag, you're it!
The Centurions will continue after these messages. We now return to the Centurions.
Ace has the least amount of weapon systems of the trio of Centurions, only 3. But to make up for it, on the show he would often combine Orbital Interceptor, which seemed a bit undersized for an aerial weapon system capable of achieving orbit, with Skybolt.
I'm combining Skybolt and Orbital Interceptor.
Power Xtreme!
While this combined configuration doesn't have an official name, In the spirit of sharing names from G.I. Joe, as some Mask and Centurions toys were known to do, I've designated this weapon system Crusader, after the G.I. Joe space shuttle. And one more mid-sized weapon system I've assembled for Ace for when he needs a little more firepower and thrust in the air than Skynet can offer, but a little more maneuverability than Orbital Interceptor or Skybolt are capable of, is this configuration.
Need more speed!
When this Maverick has a need for speed, he can beam down the weapon system I call Top Gun.
I feel the need for speed.
And the third Centurion, the Nature Boy. No, not that Nature Boy.
Jake Rockwell, rugged land operations specialist.
Who has a pet husky on the show called Shadow.
Stay, Shadow.
With his own weapon system harness that weapons can be beamed down onto. The things you can do in cartoons. Any husky owner knows you can't trust your husky to come back from the curb, let alone run around with rockets. On the show, though, he was very good at obeying commands.
You try holding this.
Shadow, disarm!
His exosuit was green and yellow. According to the designers at Kenner, Jake was based on Harrison Ford, maybe Rick Deckard in Blade Runner.
Got the wrong guy, pal.
Jake holds the record with 5 official weapon systems. Included with the figure was the small-sized weapon system Fire Force. Which consisted of a helmet, backpack, plasma accelerator, plasma shell.
Now I'm mad. Jake, don't.
Radar sensor, plasma repulsor, and twin laser cannon. The plasma shell can be launched either by pulling the launcher switch or by rotating the repulsor, as long as the launcher is plugged into the rotating plug on the backpack. Jake was such a sharp shooter, despite the massive size of the missile launcher, he could shoot down other missiles with it.
Plasma accelerator, fire!
In addition to Fire Force, he had 3 mid-sized weapon systems and a large one. For the mid-sized systems, there was Wild Weasel.
Cobra!
No, not that Wild Weasel.
Don't you call me Weasel either, pal.
No, I didn't.
I said you're paranoid. No, you called me Weasel and I heard you.
No, not that Weasel either.
Assemble Wild Weasel assault weapon system.
This was a 2-wheeled vehicle, not unlike Batman's Batpod in The Dark Knight.
You gotta pedal harder than that to keep up with me.
Like Depth Charger, it didn't require Jake to wear his helmet, even though it could fit inside. It consisted of the backpack power drive unit, visor shield, chest pack, steering arm, target locator turret, adapter plug, footrests, a pair of stabilizer fins, and land lasers.
Fire radar laser cannons now!
By turning the target locator, you could steer the chest shaft to make turns. Wild Weasel could be reconfigured from horizontal mode to vertical mode, slower in this configuration, but more accurate when firing upon enemy forces, although Jake preferred speed over accuracy.
I'll cut him off at the pass!
Unlike how Orbital Interceptor and Tidal Blast could be used outside of their intended elements, Wild Weasel was only effective on land and wasn't recommended for deep-sea diving.
Jettison Wild Weasel!
Jake's second mid-sized weapon system wasn't a land system. Hornet was a helicopter that allowed Jake to provide Ace some aerial backup.
You take the strafers, and I'll eliminate the ground boards.
It wasn't able to maneuver as well as Ace's weapon systems, though, so even though it allowed Jake to be airborne, most of his targets remained ground targets while he strafed them from above.
I love a parade!
great against ground forces, but outmatched against other aerial enemies like the Doomstrafers.
Gotcha!
Hornet was another weapon system that didn't require a helmet, although like the others, one could fit if you wanted to use it. It consisted of the backpack lifting module, canopy, chest pack control unit, a pair of landing skids, sonic thrusters, targeting sensors, a freeze ray cannon, laser gun, and 4 Sidewinder missiles. Pressing the button on the backpack will spin the helicopter blades, as well as rotate the chest freeze ray cannon. Jake wasn't the only non-aerial expert that knew how to use Hornet. Since there wasn't always water around for Max to swim around in, he used Hornet on a few different occasions to make himself useful, in To Dare Dominion Part 2, and in Day of the Animals.
Xtreme!
While the episodes sometimes weren't very elaborate, it does appear some thought was put into which weapon systems could realistically be operated by a Centurion who wasn't an expert in that particular environment. Max, the diving expert, would be more effective in Hornet than Wild Weasel, which would require greater driving skill and reflexes on land.
I'd know that sound anywhere. His swing shot!
Jake's final mid-sized weapon system was Swing Shot.
Power! Xtreme!
Like Max's Seabat, Swing Shot was released very close to the line's cancellation in small numbers, and is one of the rarest Centurion's toys of all.
We're gonna see what this baby's made of, all right.
It consisted of the backpack power drive, chest pack, a pair of treadmill arms with roto treads, armored mega blasters, trajectoid missiles, a howitzer, targeting sensor, and infrascope.
It's dynamite, a real addition to my weapon systems arsenal.
Like the other rare weapon system, Seabat, it has a knob on the backpack which will rotate the howitzer when turned.
This new swing shot weapon system works like a dream.
And Jake's large weapon system, the massive detonator.
Hit me with the detonator, Crystal. Power Xtreme!
Made up of the backpack unit, the chest pack blaster module with a pair of blaster shields, a pair of stabilizers, stabilizer struts, missile launchers with splicer missiles, sonic ray guns that could cut through almost anything, a rangefinder, and sonic screen. Pressing the button on the backpack will turn the sonic ray guns, make the chest freeze cannons pulse, and the gear spin.
Now let's cool down this fire.
The splicer missiles can be fired either by turning the switch,
Fire splicer missile!
or plugging one of them into the top of the backpack. The most impressive and devastating weapon system of them all, if you ask me.
Well, it's certainly big.
When the forces of evil threaten to take over the world, you could send in the Delta Force, G.I. Joe, or Jake Rockwell by himself with Detonator.
And that's the name of that tune.
There was only one logical course of action to take when Rockwell stomped towards you in this thing.
What should we do, Doc? Retreat, you fool.
The final release for the three heroes was an add-on for their existing weapon systems. The Power Pack was another release originally intended for '87 that was released in '86, but is nowhere near as sought after as the other limited late releases. The set consisted of a backpack, a radar, missiles, and adapter. The set could be added to any weapon system to make their spinning gimmicks automated. By pulling the radar dish, the pull string would make the various gimmicks on the system spin, launch, or pulse for a few seconds. The Power Pack never appeared on the animated series.
The Centurions will continue after these messages. We now return to the Centurions.
I've had the funniest feeling ever since we got here that we aren't alone.
That's right, the Centurions were opposed by 4 villains. To counter the TV and movie star good looks of the heroes, the 2 human villains are some of the ugliest figures of all.
Crudely put, but
They were led by Doc Terror
this is Doc Terror with an ultimatum.
as he was known on the show. Dr. Terror is on his toy packaging. His set included a helmet, Syntax, his robotic half that the Doc Terror half could be detached from, a missile, claw arm, and a pair of claws.
There will be no mercy.
Doc Terror had two gimmicks, or rather his android attachment Syntax did. By turning Syntax's head, the arm would rotate, although this one feels pretty stiff. And the safer route is to turn the arm, which will rotate Syntax's head. And pressing a button on Syntax's spring-loaded arm will launch whatever you have plugged into the cannon. On the show, Doc's arm also had magnetic powers. Doc Terror's henchman was Hacker, who, according to Jim Cornette, was instantly over when he debuted on the show because he came out of a box.
What the heck's that?
He wasn't over with me, though. Not only did this walking underwear stain want to enslave mankind, even worse, he was cruel to dogs.
Out of my way, dog.
You okay, boy? Now I'm mad.
Doc was the brains and Hacker was the brawn.
Hacker! The doctor couldn't come in person, so he sent his goon squad.
The set included Legion, his robotic half, a helmet, a mace, and an axe. When his right arm is wound up, holding Legion's head down will make the arm spin. Hacker and Terror can be detached from their robot halves, which can combine to form Uniborg.
Uniborg is mine for yourself. The ultimate cyborg. We are our own master.
Like the glimpse we got of the Centurion's origin story in the episode Man or Machine 2, a flashback is shown revealing the cybernetic origin of Hacker and Terror. Hacker is promised money and power by Doc Terror to undergo a cybernetic operation.
How would you like to be rich and famous, and 100 times as strong as you are now? I'd like that.
And instantly regrets it.
Look, I don't like it. I want you to change me back. Fool, you can't go back.
When he's told by Terror that the process is irreversible, Hacker unleashes his rage, injuring Doc Terror, who undergoes the same horrific process thanks to Hacker. Shades of Superman 3's nightmare fuel scene of a woman being turned into a robot. Not just ugly, but tragic too. Terror had a pair of Doom drones to help his quest to conquer Earth.
Attention, Doom drone strafers.
Begin bomb run.
The Strafer was an aerial assault soldier. What they lacked in skill, they made up for in sheer numbers.
Where there's one Strafer, you can expect a crowd.
While Ace could fly circles around them, he only had so much ammo, so they would often use the rope-a-dope method to outlast him by taking a pounding longer than he could dish it out.
Well, I'll bet my grandma's rocking chair Doc Terror'd love to play with that gadget.
That's right, in addition to operating on its own, the Strafer can be combined with either Doc Terror or Hacker to give them flight capabilities.
What the heck's that?
It's the second Doom drone and the final rare and highly sought-after release of the line. You don't see too many of them.
You won't be seeing this one for long if I can help it.
The Traumatizers were Terror's endless supply of ground assault drones. It too was instantly over because it came out of a box. It could be combined with Terror, Hacker, or the Strafer. A spring-loaded missile housed in the torso could be fired by tilting the torso up and turning its head. And that was all for the standard Kenner toy line. But a ton of merchandise bearing the Centurion's name was also released in '86.
This is where it hits the fan.
Instead of playing with the Centurions, you could be a Centurion thanks to HG Toys. They released a twin laser cannon set and a communications pack featuring lights and sounds, plus costumes of Ace, Max, and Jake, which included helmets and an exosuit, which the weapons could be attached to. Areola Soft designed a game for the Spectrum and Commodore 64. It wasn't released until '87 though, when the franchise was already out of power, so it didn't garner much success. Golden Books put out a number of different books, coloring, sticker, and puzzle books, similar to the Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Masters of the Universe books that accompanied those toy lines. A thermos, lunchbox, and flask, plus a thermos bag. And a company called Impulse put out a very interesting series of toys? Tools? There was a shrunk-down 6-inch version of Kenner's Ace McLeod figure that had a working pair of binoculars attached to his back, and a shrunk-down 6-inch Doc Terror with a working flashlight in his chest. Now Doc could literally turn the lights off and bring dark days upon the world.
Then nothing will stop me from enslaving mankind.
And the 3 Centurions were shrunk down even more for a line of 2-inch mini flashlights and mini binoculars. And some watches were released. Similar to the Takara micro-change watches, the figures could be removed from the watch strap, and a little weapon system could be attached to the figure. Arco produced a number of items to turn your bicycle into a wild weasel. We never got a Rex charger, but we did get some glow-in-the-dark keychains.
Glowing like phosphorus.
Plus some pencil toppers and a compass. The mobile device of the 80s, the Viewmaster, showcased some Centurions adventures. We joke about it all the time, but here they are. An 80s toy line with its own underwear. Some kites, winter hats, a clock, a telephone set, some home video releases on VHS, an Ace McLeod desktop toy for schoolwork and crafts.
It really looks swell.
A drawing set of pencils with eraser, sharpener, book, and pencil case. Jake Rockwell's Battle to Stop Doc Terror board game by Parker Brothers. Walkie-talkies featuring Ace McLeod, and a trio of coin banks featuring the helmets of Ray, Jake, and Ace. In the UK, some Ace McLeod aviators. World International Publishing released 4 mini-comic books with audio cassettes. They also produced 2 annuals, one in '87 and one in '88. This is believed to be the last piece of official Centurions merchandise of that era. Thank you to centurions1986.wordpress.com for the resources on all this Centurions memorabilia. It had a massive marketing machine behind it, lots of cool toys that are remembered fondly by those lucky few that own them in '86, and sought after by many who didn't have them. So why did it fail? Speaking from personal experience, they were too big and too expensive. They didn't go with any other toys at a whopping 7 inches tall.
I've had the same sensation myself.
There were just too many great toys on the shelves in '86, and despite Kenner's urging, it wasn't possible to collect them all. Choices had to be made, so I stuck with G.I. Joe and Transformers. The show is good, at times amazing, but lacks the memorable, slightly more mature stories of the Sunbow shows. The cast was so small, only 3 heroes in toy form, and cancelled before the reinforcements could arrive on the shelves. So I can't speak for everyone, but for me, they were really good, really cool, but not the best.
I'm going to ignore that remark.
Kenner and Ruby Spears did most things right, but they were just outgunned by G.I. Joe and Transformers. That's what happens when you have unlimited ammo. And surprisingly, Centurions has never had an official revival. No reboot show, no new comic, no official modern figures, and here's why. Hasbro purchased Kenner, so they own all the rights to the toys, but unlike Transformers, which was a toy line that spawned a tie-in TV show and comics, Centurions was a TV show that spawned a toy line, which Kenner licensed from Ruby Spears to make toys of. Warner purchased Ruby Spears and have put out some Centurions DVD releases in order to maintain their ownership of the IP. For any new toys to be officially released, reissues of the originals or modern interpretations, it would have to go through Warner, as well as the surviving families of Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, and possibly Norio Shioyama too, since he contributed to the designs as well.
That's the least of our problems at the moment.
Thanks to user Wishful Thinking on the TFW 2005 message boards for breaking it down in layman's terms.
Whatever you've heard is all true.
That's a lot of hoops to jump through for a toy line that's remembered fondly by many, but not as the best on the shelves in '86. And there's nothing wrong with that. Why does everything need to be a reboot? Why can't some things be finite? One and done. A moment in time and now a piece of history. It came, it tanked, it went.
Oh, you don't want to play anymore?
The window for reissues may even be closed. This ain't like reissuing Kenner Star Wars figures or real Ghostbusters. These are complex figures with complex weapon systems. It's not 2002 anymore, or even 2012. A reissue of the original would either fall short in quality, like the Joe O-Rings or Transformers Walmart reissues, Or the price would be so high, it would cancel out the joy a lot of people would get out of finally owning Max, Ace, and Jake.
Welcome to the 21st century.
There has to be a point where you just let it go.
Time's running out.
And I think it's pretty cool that there's only one number that comes to mind when I think of the Centurions, 1986. There's no more. There almost was, but it wasn't meant to be. As an epilogue to this video, I'll soon be following up with the history that wasn't, the unreleased toys that were planned for 1987.
I have unfinished business.
Thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this look at Man and Machine Power Xtreme.
The pleasure's all mine.
Much appreciation to the Centurions Wiki, a wonderful resource for all sorts of Centurions information and trivia.
It's time we had a little help from our friends.
And thank you so much to each and every Patreon tribe member, and to every channel member as well. Your support of this channel is greatly appreciated.
Let's blow this place.
Give the like a click to make it YouTube's pick. Leave a thought below on these toys and on the show. And to join the tribe, fire your stencil missile at subscribe.
Power Xtreme!